on this Tuesday.
Well, I mean, we're on just about everywhere nowadays, aren't we, Jeremy?
D-Live, Periscope, Twitch, YouTube, and now Stereo. 5 platforms.
Yep.
Don't ask me how I do it. Techno wizardry. We're going to be talking about politics, current events, culture, all the relevant news of the day with our friend joining us live on Stereo. Our Stereo guest today is Bill from youtube.com/all-1. Is that correct, Bill?
All-1 and the ends justify the memes, because I have to be complicated and keep my live show separate from my pre-recorded stuff.
Of course, as any professional should do.
Bill's a big
Yes.
contributor to our normal Tuesday live chat, so you guys might recognize his name as all-1 in chat there. And let me just get the YouTube event opened up here. We've already got 5 million people watching. So you guys might recognize his name as all. Perfect. All right, what's up, Thenian? Let's jump into the topics of the day. Just to give everyone a heads up, Bill, this is highly experimental with Bill. He may not be on for the whole stream. He can drop off whenever he wants. But we wanted to utilize the Stereo platform to, because it's new tech and that's what we do around here. We innovate.
And we tested it out on Saturday night with me at home and Jeremy here in the studio, and it worked out pretty good. And we asked Bill to join us, and I think it's going to be a fun time.
Twitch overestimated the wokeness of its user base. You may have seen some feedback from them on Twitter. They tried to implement the WOMXN acronym for women, because it's Women's Appreciation, Women's History Month or whatever right now.
I guess, yeah.
We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about how the FBI cannot release the cause of death of the officer killed at the Capitol. And speculate on some of the reasons why that may be.
Okay.
That's been a big topic of conversation lately because there's some suspicion that he didn't actually die. This is the guy they said got killed by the fire extinguisher on the head. So that's kind of our 9/11 segment playbook. Yeah, you remember that one, Bill? That was pretty good.
Yeah, I actually talked to several people who were at the Capitol building during all of that, and the only real death that I'd heard of in the immediate was Ashley Babbitt, because everything else was kind of nonsensical. So,
of course, we know to pump the narrative as hard as possible, we have to get the highest death count, and I think that's where that may be coming from, but we'll be investigating that. We got a science bite of the day. We got a science bite and a science chomp, because we love science here at the Weekly Narrative, the alt-centrist.
We appreciate science.
We got a small study regarding alcohol intake that I want to just give you as a science bite, but we have a science chomp. A brand new study that just came out today regarding COVID restrictions and their effect on mental health in children, and I got to tell you, Delaney and I glanced at the numbers beforehand. It is horrifyingly bad.
Yep.
So we're going to go over that study. Minneapolis is considered purchasing social media influencers to promote propaganda on social media in regards to the George Floyd trial. Have you heard this?
I heard that they were only going to allow one person of the family in the courtroom during the trial, and that's all I've heard.
Because we got to counter misinformation, and of course we all know the misinformation is a big problem right now. And we're going to look at what Canada's doing to punish these kids for the COVID restrictions, and look at some stories from Twitter about what parents are doing to their children. Let me tell you right now, it's going to terrify you.
Okay.
And a couple more COVID stories. And if we have time, we'll get to a fun OnlyFans story from local here in Sacramento. You may have heard of the Sacramento mom who got her kids banned from the Catholic school.
Yep.
Because she had an OnlyFans. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we got a bunch of people in chat. Let's fire it off, get the intro going, and start this show. Adapt and overcome. That is the theme of the night. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for those who just joined us, we're with Bill from all-1. You can find his channel on YouTube. He's joining us via Stereo today to add commentary to our coverage.
Yep.
let's jump into our first story of the night. Oh, nice. My Chrome window's already set up here. Perfect. Love it. Love it.
On the fly, techno wizardry.
That's how we do it. So, quick little fun story from Twitter, because we've had a lot of corporations going woke stories lately, right? We've heard about Coca-Cola, Disney, whatnot. Twitch joined the train, and they tweeted that it's Women's History Month. Women spelled WOMX.
Yeah, I was going to say they spelled women wrong.
Yeah, they got a lot of backlash for that, actually.
I think maybe they got somebody with Tourette's that wrote up Women's History Month.
Well, it sparked a larger conversation about the use of the X with Latino, but they basically replied on Twitter and an apology, basically saying that, while we originally wanted to use a word that acknowledges the shortcomings of gender binary language, after hearing directly from you, including members of the LGBTQIA+ community on Twitch, we will be using the spelling women, spelled normally, WOMEN, moving forward.
Well, good. I mean, you should have done it in the first place, but thank you for apologizing.
Well, Twitch, for those who don't know, I mean, Bill might know if you've looked into streaming on Twitch at all, Twitch is the worst of the media platforms. It's completely colonized by the purple hair nose rings. So it's, they promote all this stuff.
They thrive in it.
Yeah, it's filled with e-thoughts.
Yes.
And most of them are average-looking girls that just are playing a very good cutesy game.
Or average girls in bikinis on the beach.
They are. And then aside from the thoughts, it's a bunch of. That's pretty much it. Maybe there's some hardcore gamers. But that's my take on Twitch.
I used to consume Twitch to some degree, but I went on there today and just to take a glance and see, and I think the first one that I saw was just, like you said, Bill, an average-looking girl, but with barely no clothes on, and she was laying sprawled out on her bed with her phone in her hand, just responding to chats in the phone. It's like, oh, this is the great gaming content that I would come to Twitch.com, which is the gaming streaming site, to view, right? Oh, this is great gaming content. She wasn't even playing a game. And then the second one was two chicks streaming from their phone on a beach, again, in barely any clothes. They were just in bikinis, bouncing around, and the chat, the people who participate, they were like, do jumping jacks, you should do sprints, and do all this stuff. Like, oh my God. So it's just a bunch of losers in these chats watching these chicks in barely any clothes, and that's what the gaming content has devolved into.
A little bit, yeah. I do a little bit of gaming, and I've noticed that's gone on in the gaming world, and it's kind of gross. That's why I'm trying to get out of it.
Completely degenerate. They are leading the front on the degeneracy there.
Bill.
Bill's in chat tearing it up. I see that.
Yep.
Well, I could have said that, but we'll leave certain things left unsaid.
Bill's operating on multiple fronts here. He's doing stereo and chat at the same time. That's pretty impressive.
Yes.
We got a story here from Epoch Times, which is a conservative-leaning outlet, which is probably the only place you're going to see this information because, again, we think this is part of the 9/11 playbook where they're demonizing Trump supporters. We're talking about the FBI cannot disclose the cause of death of Officer Brian Sicknick. This is the guy who we were told died via a fire extinguisher to the head during the Trump insurgency slash coup, whatever you want to call it, whatever kind of terminology you want to use. From Epoch Times, the FBI cannot disclose the cause of death of U.S. Capitol Officer Brian Sicknick after the New York Times and other news outlets either retracted or updated reports claiming he was killed by being hit with a fire extinguisher during the Capitol riots on January 6th. So, again, for those who maybe weren't watching this as closely, this is the case that they used, the tip of the spear for their argument in why this was a violent insurrection, right?
Yep. Oh, well, yeah, it was violent, but, yeah.
Well, it wasn't an insurrection.
Yeah, it wasn't an insurrection, yeah. It was the farthest thing.
It was violent so much in the fact that the police were highly aggressive and people were already in a pressure cooker and I think that they responded to the immediate police response. The police were more forceful than they have been with the leftist, period. And again, I've talked to people who were there. I've seen video. People had guns drawn down on them.
Yeah.
I don't know of anywhere where the leftists are active where they've had guns directly drawn on them, unless there's been a gun, on their side drawn first. So, and then the other part of that is that they were violent, and the fact that the majority of our society isn't very violent. Most people have no idea what real violence is or understand it at all. I mean, from what I saw, it was a lot of people pushing cops away, pushing over barriers, some counter pepper spraying. That was about it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone on the
whatever.
No, I mean, I agree with you in general on the asymmetry of how the left and the right is treated with their quote-unquote violent insurrections. I think there was just a case of some locality having their local government buildings being stormed yesterday due to COVID restrictions or something like that, or due to some other restrictions. Anyway, nobody talked about an insurrection with that one.
No, of course not.
Continuing on from the article here. FBI Director Chris Wray responded to a question from Senator Chuck Grassley during a Senate hearing on Tuesday about whether the agency has determined Sicknick's cause of death. Grassley noted conflicting reports about his cause of death and whether there is a homicide investigation. Quote, "There is an ongoing investigation into his death," Wray said, adding that, "I certainly understand and appreciate the keen interest in what happened to him." Yeah, well, half the country is being demonized as violent insurrectionist Nazis right now, so maybe if you can help ease up on the narrative a little bit. Yeah, definitely. There's a
right?
quote unquote keen interest. I would definitely use those words at least. Despite Ray's testimony, it's still unclear whether the FBI does not know Sicknick's cause of death or whether the agency simply will not disclose it. Ray then stated that the investigation is ongoing. That means we cannot disclose the cause of death. So, when asked by Grassley whether the FBI knows his cause of death, Ray said, "I didn't say that," and again repeated that the FBI cannot disclose the cause of death. There was some confusion around the narrative because his mother said that he wasn't hit on the head, and his mother said that we think he had a stroke, but we don't know anything for sure. So a little bit of confusion there on that one, and I think any kind of clarification that we can get on the whole insurrectionist, half the countries being Nazis narrative could be, I mean, it's exactly why they're not really covering this, because they want that narrative to remain in place,
Of course.
undamaged.
Well, I mean, definitely a hit on the head with a fire extinguisher will definitely do some damage. But are they saying that? Because I remember seeing videos of that happening. Are they saying that that didn't happen?
I have no idea.
Like, I'm just not understanding. Go ahead, Bill.
It did not happen. He had a heart attack, or something, the next day. He got in some tussles, I think, and pepper spray, but he was back at the station fine. He actually talked to his brother.
Yeah.
I believe he talked to his brother that evening from the reports I have seen.
Okay.
And it was completely unrelated.
Okay.
There was a woman who was kind of stampeded, if I'm not mistaken, but again, that I don't think it's as bad as they were making it out to be. I think a woman kind of collapsed while people were moving. I don't think it was, I don't know any impeding. I'll put it that way. And there was someone I was told that was punched by the cops and fell 50 feet and died, but that's not one we're talking about.
Yeah,
so,
it's not.
Because the cops did it.
Yeah.
Notice how the narrative changes, right? The cops did it, protect the cops. Before, if the cops did it, if it's a leftist, you put a leftist.
Oh yeah, defund the police, everything.
Yeah, I remember. I heard about the girl getting trampled. I know that. I heard about that story as well. But yeah, so.
Anyway.
Yeah, but
In
as
any
far
case,
as the
it's
cop goes,
sad.
he wasn't hit by anything
Yeah.
at all. He seemed to be fine. So that seems to be what the story is now.
Okay, so cool. I didn't know. I'm glad that somebody's talking about this a little bit.
Yeah, 6 dead. I think that's the count, Holly. I'm not sure. I don't know the total. I haven't been following that. Honestly, I've been pretty disinterested in the whole Capitol thing because just the way it's been being spun. We've got a related story here. This one is incredibly interesting to me, and it's a good indication of where we're headed in the future. You guys may be aware of the George Floyd's trial. Yeah, I am using an ad blocker, CNN. Why don't you chill? George Floyd's trial's coming up. It's in March, and Minneapolis is preparing. Now, we all know that there was a lot of, well, let's use the left's word here, misinformation regarding his death. And most people will say that it was the knee on the neck that did it. Some people will say that it was the 3 times illegal, or the lethal dose of fentanyl in his blood that did it. Some people will say it was the COVID that did it, because he did have COVID, by the way.
He did have COVID.
He probably got counted as a COVID death as well. We don't want to talk about that, though. But Minneapolis is from CNN. This is from CNN, so it's,
You know it's credible.
Yeah, Minneapolis wanted to hire social media influencers to help with the city's message during Derek Chauvin's trial. So,
Okay.
Derek Chauvin being the officer with the knee on the neck. Now, a little bit of a clickbait on you guys here, because it turns out that they had already considered this. They had funding approved for it, but they decided to backtrack. And this is the article about that backtrack. From CNN.com, Minneapolis had floated a plan. Yeah, floated, meaning they got approval and funding for it. Floated. To hire 6 social media influencers to help share information during the upcoming murder trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer charged in the death of George Floyd. But the city scrapped the idea Monday after it came under withering criticism from the public that the effort was aimed at influencing public opinion.
Well, it kind of is.
Quote, "This was never about trying to change or persuade the public opinion on any particular message, but it was about getting important information out quickly and in an equitable way."
Again, equitable.
Yeah, that's kind of a dead giveaway right there, that you're definitely leaning towards one side of the spectrum there. Dave Rubador, the city's director of neighborhood and community relations, said at a public safety preparations meeting. He emphasized the word influencer did not accurately represent the effort. Quote, "We are sorry and acknowledge that we have to work to repair the harm that has been caused." I think that's just the cookie cutter response.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry, we acknowledge, and we have to work to repair the harm that has been caused.
Well, you better. Somebody better. Somebody better pay.
Well, somebody already did pay, and this is where that comes in. Minneapolis City Council approved the plan Friday, authorizing $1.2 million, I'm rounding up, in city funding for contracts with various community organizations throughout the trial. The plan included hiring influencers defined as having, quote, "a large social media presence," and would have required them to share, quote, "city-generated and approved messages."
Oh, wow. So, yeah, that's not going to influence anything right there.
Oh, this is great. It gets even better. Listen to this. Under the program, which targeted Black, Native American, Hmong, Somali, and Latino communities.
So everybody but white people?
Under the program targeting everybody but white people, every influencer would have been paid $2,000 to counteract misinformation that might arise during the trial.
Sounds to me that's a little racist that they're only targeting like people of color, because they kind of know that POCs are a little bit easier to influence and misinform.
There's multiple angles that you could take, and this is why I think this article is so interesting, because there's the first angle you could take. The first angle you could take is, oh my God, the city is paying social media influencers to spread propaganda. What kind of dystopian nightmare do we live in? The second, more nuanced angle that you could take is that Minneapolis may think that their population is so stupid that they kind of say it right here. They're targeting Black, Native American, Hmong, Somali, Latino communities because they have to counteract misinformation that might arise during the trial. Who is going to be the communities that rise up and riot and burn the city down if the George Floyd trial goes bad?
All of them.
Those communities.
Yep.
So in a way, maybe this is smart. I don't know. Bill, what do you think? Bill, are you there?
Yeah, you guys are kind of cutting in and out, and then my wife she needs to steal her laptop back for a minute, so.
We will continue on.
But I'm running this off the phone, so I'm here.
We're curious if you have any thoughts on Minneapolis using social media influencers to spread propaganda and counteract misinformation during the George Floyd trial.
Well, obviously there are all kinds of issues there, but, today, if you worship the state, you're a good person, and if you do everything they say, and they lead us, and all hail the state, because the state is the ultimate God, how could man have perceived anything other than the state before? I mean, it's right out on the leftist, whether you're talking about fascist or you're talking about socialist or communist, all of them in their writings talk about how that humanity and human history cannot exist outside of the state. These people worship the state. It is their religion. So if you think this way, if you want to be led by the nose everywhere, then yeah, you're going to be happy with this kind of stuff. You're going to be like, oh yeah, but the government told me to. They told me to wear 3 masks and stick a swab up my butt, that kind of stuff. So,
that is true. This is, people on the left are going to see this and think, oh, great, this is great. Now these poor, marginalized communities don't have to be subjected to misinformation online.
Yeah.
They have a direct line of real information directly from the state. And, that's how they're going to hopefully quell them from, because, my prediction is this trial is not going to go well. And when I say that's not going to go well, I mean it's not going to go well for the left.
Yeah, it's not.
Because they overcharged Derek Chauvin. The evidence is fairly overwhelming that he had, copious amounts of beyond lethal dosages of these crazy drugs in his system. The video, so this is the thing, this is why the trial is going to go bad. When the full video came out of the entire interaction from start to finish, the part, that showed the part where he said, put me on the ground, that showed the part where he was resisting, that showed the part where he may have been swallowing drugs. Nobody responded to that.
Of course not.
On social media. It was dead silence because they all saw it. They realized, oh, shit, this wasn't.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the knee on the neck, not drugs, and he was supposed to not be able to breathe, even though he was saying he couldn't breathe when there was no knee on the neck. And
everyone's mind was already made up before the full video was released, so it's...
Well, I was actually, when I first saw it, I thought the knee on the neck wasn't a bad thing. It was the fact that he was laying down in the, in essentially a prone position, which is known to cause asphyxiation for a period of 10 minutes while he's under duress. And where's the ambulances? One of the things that I suggested after this, there's been a lot of people said things for the police, but why don't we have EMTs run with the police? Why don't we, just like we have medics in the military, why don't we have EMTs roll with police units?
It's a good idea.
Depending on what's... Yeah, I've talked about it several times. My channel's too little to get the idea out there, though. Someone... I can't believe no one's thought of this before, because I've worked on both sides of that, not as an EMT, but I've worked in a hospital as security, EMTs bringing folks in, police coming in. I've worked for a sheriff's department before, and I worked in the military. I just don't get why we don't do those kind of things. And that would have avoided all of this. And then the knee on the neck thing did seem excessive to me for that long, right? And everyone agreed with that.
Yeah.
But if they hadn't pushed it, that fentanyl autopsy thing probably wouldn't have been a big deal. The fact that they burned down like the majority of our major cities because of all this and other incidences made the whole thing like, we don't care. Why do we care? Why do we care if this cop did this when you all, we give you an inch, you take a million miles, when everyone could consolidate and get behind it?
Yeah, when the reaction is exponentially more destructive than the actual event itself.
Yeah.
It kind of, you're right. It's like, man, what? Okay, well now I don't really care about the Chauvin thing so much. I care that you burned down my cities and that my whole city's been shut down and boarded up for 8 months straight.
I'm just fearful for the people in that city right now that are gonna have to deal with the aftermath of the trial, because we all, like, people on here know that trial's not gonna go the way they want it. They're gonna, he's not gonna go to prison for murder. What are they trying to go for? Is like third degree murder or whatever.
Yep.
They're trying to go for third degree murder instead of being realistic and charging him accordingly. But I already know the people, the BLM of Minneapolis, they're gonna just burn the city down when,
of course, yeah.
When he gets off.
It might not be.
Go ahead, Bill.
A tactical assessment here. Yeah, tactical assessment. It might not be that bad, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of those folks that came into these various cities are imported in. They're from outside areas, and now that we don't have the orange man in, we don't need to make such a big a deal. I get that those folks are often against the establishment and the establishment left, but what you have to understand is the extreme left and the establishment left still use each other. It's a weird thing where they use each other, and the establishment left is the one that actually has power. Those other folks, they're just pawns being shifted around. You know, we saw that in Kenosha with the guys that got smoked, right? All of them were all like criminals.
Right.
That's true.
And I know a thing or two about criminals. So, you know, I'm just saying, they go after those folks and they purposely use them. A lot of your people who are in BLM or in Antifa aren't necessarily criminals. They're just lost fools.
Yeah.
You know,
They're lost little sheep.
Brought up within the system.
Yeah, I hadn't considered the Orange Man factor because I've been looking. You know, I have been watching. Portland's still been burning down all the time. If you haven't noticed,
Yeah.
and they don't care. They had signs as soon as Biden got in. They said we hate Biden.
Yep.
We hate everything. We just want to burn shit.
Yeah, they attacked the Democratic Center or the
DNC.
the DNC in Portland.
Yeah.
Like right after Biden got elected, and they like spray painted on the front of it like
So-
we hate Biden too.
The Trump factor is gone, but these people just hate everything. So we'll see if they decide to rise up. It'll be nice and well, at least it won't be as cold. I think we've been in a nice little lull because of winter, you know. So that's why we didn't see any looting or rioting in Texas when the whole thing froze. Right?
It's true.
Too cold.
Well, and you're right. And when you're talking about Portland, understand you're talking about Portland.
Yeah.
So you are talking about
Special case.
You know, a city that. Yeah. Because there were riots in Pennsylvania, right, and they got quashed immediately.
Yeah.
You have to look at the areas that are sympathetic. D.C. allowed the anti-riots because D.C. is sympathetic. I mean, I live near the area. I can tell you, it's very, very blue everywhere outside of there. And then you get to Western Maryland, you get just the past Quantico in Virginia. You know, you get a little bit east of Baltimore, and everything's like super red. So it's just, yeah.
We'll find out here shortly enough.
Just everything right around the swamp.
Yep. As as Stalking Horse says in our chat there, if the narrative is shit, you must acquit. You know, I'm glad that he said that because I was trying to think of some kind of rhyme with acquit to apply here, but he did it. Congratulations to you, sir.
We should make a sign.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Go protest with that sign.
Yeah.
Let's see. Just going through the comments here before I jump over to the next one here. The cops should have known that it wasn't good optics. Yeah, and that's the big question. If you got a camera pointing right at you, you got to question the judgment of somebody who would knee on the neck for 10 minutes straight.
Well, and also, too, my mom brought this up. She's like, why did they not let the EMTs help him when the EMTs arrived? Like, they wouldn't let the EMTs through. So that was pretty messed up. I will admit that. But otherwise, like...
Well...
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, the optics aren't good, but I don't think Derek Chauvin cared. Supposedly he had excessive force complaints on his record, from what I recall. He was a cop that probably was getting near the end of his career. He'd been there forever. Two of those guys, I think, were like a week out of the academy, and the third one was just let go, you know, on his own or something. It was something like that. They were very, very new. So Chauvin probably thought, oh, you know, I've been here forever. I'll get a slap on the wrist. Didn't expect it to be a media storm.
Yeah.
You know, Marcus Albury, the whole case with that, you know, the Georgia, you know, Ku Klux Klan members come and hunt them down. That whole thing, that was meant to kick this off, and it didn't. The media purposely did this. They found a case that they knew would get people riled up. Then there were other people, and look, I'm going to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole because this is just the reality, guys. Then there were other people who had money that could back this stuff, and they were like, oh, we're going to get them organized, we're going to get them buses, we're going to get them moved. And that's what they did. And the guy that had the Black Lives Matter as a nonprofit charity that was to get cops and inner city kids together, that guy got all of his money taken away, and that money was given to the organization, which are avowed Marxists, trying to destroy the American family, and they have donated a lot of money to the Democrat Party. So, anyways, there's the dot. There's the dots.
It must be nice to be a member of the media and just have to sit there and watch social media And you're just kind of like playing that one game at the carnival where you get the fishing pole and you gotta get the rubber duck out of the water. As it goes by, you find oh, George Floyd, yeah, okay. Well, you find all these other stories of black brutality from police and stuff. You find the perfect one, and you just pluck it out of the water and just amplify it, and then cities are burning across the country. That's it.
I kind of like felt when social media came out, I was like, man, these media companies are going to go out of business because social media is doing the work for them. They don't even have to go like talk to people anymore. People just send them shit.
No, it's true. Yeah, they basically just report on stuff that was on Twitter.
Go ahead, Bill.
Right, and they don't care. They don't care if what's on Twitter is true or not. They care about the narrative, right? You know this.
Oh yeah.
So they don't care about journalism, right? They only care about activism.
Yep. And
so the bigger problem is the folks sitting on the other side of the boob tube listening to them, because we're not going to get rid of the corporates. Propagandist or the fourth wing of the United States government, or the fifth wing, depending on if you want to count our spy agencies as a fourth wing or not, however you want to count them. But yeah, and we know over the years too, the government, the CIA, speaking of spy agencies, whoever else, has worked with the media. When we got all these leaks coming out about Trump. Was that really a leak, or was that just some made-up story the media was using to rile folks up? So, I don't know. Like I said, I'm getting all Alex Jones. Alex Jones on you.
That's right. We add a little spice into the stream here with All-1 joining us today on the stereo stream. We definitely appreciate that. Let's jump over.
Oh yeah, man. Anytime.
We went on his stream last week, so we only thought it was appropriate to return the favor and offer a spot on ours.
Yeah, and he's got such a lovely voice as well that it makes for good stereo. Haha.
Oh, nice. Double entendre there. Let's jump to a fun little segment we like to do called the Science Bite of the Day, because we are very pro science here at the Alt Centrist, or Weekly Narrative, whatever you want to call us.
We love science.
So we like to drop little scientific studies as they come out, new stuff, just to keep you up to date. This is a quick, fun one called, from, Journal of Affective Disorders. Low to moderate alcohol intake is associated with lower risk of incidental depressive symptoms. That's right, you heard that right. Low to moderate alcohol intake associated with lower risk of incidental depressive symptoms.
Okay.
Just to jump to the results here, give you guys a quick summary of what's going on. 30,000 participants, roughly, were included. They studied 278,000 person years of follow-up, meaning just cumulative years based on the 30,000 people. They found that subjects with low to moderate drinking had a significantly lower incidence of depressive symptoms compared to never drinking subjects with a pooled... I'm not going to get into that. I don't even know what that means. A J-shaped relation between alcohol consumption and incident depressive symptoms was identified in Chinese men, U.S. men, and UK men and women. So, there you go.
If you drink a little bit here and there, you're going to be less depressed.
Yep, just have a couple drinks a week or something like that.
Yeah, just have a couple drinks every once in a while.
That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
Really, the only reason I brought this study up is because I want to justify the fact that I drink straight vodka every time I do the stream. So it's really just for self-validation on this one.
You want to feel like you're not doing any harm to yourself.
Yep.
That's fine, Jeremy.
Well, that's how science works. You find the studies that reinforce what you already believe, and then you just repeat those.
Hell yeah.
Science, trademark. Not... that's how the religion of science works these days anyway.
Well, and I'm pretty sure it would validate Bill as well, because I know Bill likes to pop open a can of beer every once in a while.
We like to have some drinks on the All-1 stream.
Well, ends justify the memes.
Ends justify the memes, yep, that's right. All right.
Are you drinking tonight, Bill?
Oh, I think we got a stereo comment here. Let me see if we can pop that bad boy. Yeah, we do. Oh, we got 2. Oh, man, I've been behind. We got 5 people listening over here. Okay, we're going to hop into a stereo comment here.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't pay in Nikes or something like that. You gotta get these guys in their pocketbooks where they really like it. Give them some Air Force Ones or some Jordans or something.
That was Osis, referring to, I'm sure, the payments from Minneapolis. Yeah, it's paying the social media influencers.
Oh,
and surprised
okay.
that they weren't paying him in Nikes.
Hell yeah.
Which is that's
a good one. That was a good one.
They'd probably get a lot more reach with that. Let's go to the next one here.
Hi guys. On the issue of scientific studies and lowering depressive instances, I have kind of a weird question for you. I'm curious to know about what you think about psilocybin mushrooms. I'm from Canada, and we've actually just recently legalized the use of psilocybin mushrooms for research purposes in the hopes that they may be used in the near future for medicinal, therapeutic, and also possibly recreational purposes. And there are studies that suggest that psilocybin mushrooms can actually be used to treat a myriad of mental disorders, including depression and anxiety. I'm curious to know what you guys think about that.
Personally, I am all for psilocybin mushrooms. I've done them every once in a while, and they do
Every once in a while.
every once in a while, not all the time, but every once in a while.
Not every day.
Not every day, but I do know people who, what they'll do is they'll microdose it. So they'll like grind it up into fine powder, put it in a capsule, and take it every day, and it helps with anxiety. Helps them cope with their anxiety, with their depression, those kinds of things. So I think if we could figure out a way to harness that and be able to figure out something to help people with those kinds of issues instead of getting them on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, which we know
Pharmaceuticals.
the pharmaceuticals that we know don't really help. I think that would be awesome, but it's just opening people's minds up to the possibility that nature provides us with something already that can help. So
Yeah, no, I would pretty much mirror that. I'd say there's probably a galactic treasure trove of valuable data there for medicinal uses on these hallucinogens, whatever you want to call them, entheogens, some people call them. But yeah, I'd say why not? If you were to be given an option of some crazy pharmaceutical that has been linked to tens of thousands of deaths or kind of medical horror stories, and you had the option of looking at something a little more natural, here's just a mushroom that grows out of the ground. I think any reasonable person would at least be open to the option, if not more inclined to look at the natural option rather than some of the pharmaceutical stuff that was there. And I'm all for it. I think researching it is great. And just to give a little bit of a background on my principles relating to this, I was founder of a Young Americans for Liberty chapter at my college, and we had a campaign where we advocated for legalizing heroin.
Oh.
So
okay.
yeah, exactly. That's the reaction we were going for.
You're going for full Monty.
No, well, that's because it's a principle of, I shouldn't be able to tell you what you can and can't put in your own body. And the government shouldn't be able to do the same. They should be hands off. If there's somebody has some kind of subjective medicinal value out of this, let them use it.
Yeah.
And if they suffer consequences, suffer the consequences.
Yeah, you actually have a Ninth Amendment right under the Constitution to intake anything into your body and what you wish. 10th Amendment right as well. The states would be the ones restricting that. But as far as the federal government is concerned, you can do whatever you want. That's why we had to ban alcohol in the Constitution. The original act against marijuana was a tax stamp, and in order to get the tax stamp, you had to have the marijuana, but in order to have the marijuana, you had to have the tax stamp. Therefore, it was a big catch-22 that was never going to work. That was stricken down, and then in the 70s or 60s, of course, marijuana was basically legal. In any case, the best resource, I would say, for psychedelics, go to MAPS. I actually met a guy, I think he was one of the executive directors, a former vet. There's a lot of vets there they work with guys in PTSD. I think microdosing is a really cool thing, a really cool sphere. We have to understand what medicine is. If you guys cross over, watch my stuff, I have a deep faith. And what I will tell you is that in the Bible, they used medicine, and there's a difference between what they would consider witchcraft, like going on vision quests or calling up the dead or something like that, which comes from the word pharmakeia or pharmakeia, or however you pronounce it. That's Greek, where we get our word pharmacy from. So it's actually the word for witchcraft. There's a difference in that, though, in using medicine. Even Paul tells Timothy, one of his students, who was going to take over one of the churches that he had set up, he tells him that, drink a little wine for your stomach. So, we don't need to go down a surgeon's all I'm saying. But yeah, there's great uses for these various medicinal things that aren't, labeled with 1,000 side effects by the FDA. So
that's why I'm really like having Bill's perspective on here, because he's much heavier on the historical knowledge and also the theological knowledge.
Yeah, the Christian knowledge.
Yes.
He's really in on that, and I like having that perspective from Bill.
Thanks for
It's
that
cool.
comment on the statio. That was pretty nice.
That's a good question.
Conversation starter.
That's a really good question. And I'm not a total tripper, okay? I've done it a couple times, and that's it. That's it. I didn't even see anything.
you're a heathen, Delaney.
Huh?
Yeah, she's a degenerate.
You're just
heathen.
continuing, just going down. I know.
Yeah, what I did was I went in my shower and I was like looking at my wall in my shower, and my wall in my shower was moving. Like, oh my god.
Witchcraft!
Witchcraft.
Well, what we are about to read next may be considered witchcraft of some sort. We're going to be jumping over to Canada, Holly's neck of the woods here. We can just blame everything we're about to read on Holly and any of our Canadian cohorts here.
Yeah, she's our token Canadian.
This is part of our COVID segment here. From the Toronto Sun, experts call Peel guidelines to place children in solitary quarantine cruel punishment. Peel is I had to research this because I had no idea what Peel was in reference to this title, but Peel is a region in Canada, like eastern Canada. So, drastic measures not supported by science and could have long-lasting psychological effects.
Well, at least they acknowledge that it's not supported by science.
Yeah. So, Peel Health has issued guidelines to parents instructing them to keep any children who have been sent home because of a classmate has tested positive for COVID-19 isolated in a separate room from all the other family members for 14 days.
Oh my god.
What? Lock your kid in the closet if they were exposed to anybody with COVID at school.
Sounds great. Sounds like the parents get a vacation.
Oh yeah, definitely a vacation when your kid's banging on the walls and crying the next room over for 14 days straight. This is quite alarming. Holly says this is north of Toronto.
Okay.
So the severe guidelines, which apply even to small children who are dismissed from childcare, are being criticized by experts as harmful and not supported by science. Quote, "This is cruel and unusual punishment for a child, especially for younger children, 4 to 10 years old," says Dr. Susan Richardson, microbiologist. "Shutting a child off from their parents and siblings for up to 14 days in this manner could produce significant and long-lasting emotional and psychological effects."
You don't say.
There's a nice little graphic pamphlet here that if you're on the youtube.com/weekly narrative stream, you can see the visual. It says, what to do if your child is dismissed from school or childcare. The child must self-isolate, which means stay in a separate bedroom, eat in a separate room apart from others, use a separate bathroom. If the child must leave their room, they should wear a mask and stay 2 meters apart from others.
Wow.
My God, it is strongly recommended to test for COVID-19 on or after the date listed in your letter. Unbelievable. Okay, so if any other children are living at the same home, they should stay away from school or the child care until the child who is in close contact returns to school or... so that if you have any other kids at home, they all need to stay at home for the whole time.
Oh wow. Okay.
The other kids don't need to self-isolate, but they can't go to school. So, and adults living at the same address can go to work unless the child develops symptoms. So there you go. I'm just spitballing here. Do you think it was men or women that came up with these guidelines?
Women.
Because we like to point out the gender differences here. And everything that we see and read, because I think it's valuable to look at the world through that lens. Mm-hmm. And this is definitely what I would consider overprotection, which is definitely more of a feminine trait, feminine tendency. Any thoughts on that, Bill?
What's passing for a man these days?
Yeah, good point. They're all women now.
Holly says that she says.
I don't think we don't have very masculine leadership in most of our governments, and Justin Trudeau is certainly an example of that. But I don't know. I mean, if this was a teenager, it'd be no problem because they don't come out of their room. But you're talking about young children here,
Yeah.
which have no sense of non-communal relations. Like, unless you're a child that's isolated from the beginning, being around people, being around your brothers and sisters, being around your mom and dad, your cousins, kids in school, that is normal. And kids usually want to go play with other kids. They want to be social. We are social creatures. Look, guys, I used to work in a jail. You know what we did to inmates that misbehaved? We put them in jail inside of jail, and they didn't get a lot of contact with other folk. We quit throwing people in the hole back in the day, where they got no sunlight and very little food because, it's cruel and unusual punishment, or so it is considered today. And I just don't see what isolating your child because of something that's not going to kill them. They're going to be asymptomatic, so that means that they cannot spread. I don't care what the WHO says. You cannot spread if you're asymptomatic unless
Fauci said that too.
You have to have some sort of admission, right? You have to have a sneeze or a cough or an accidental spit or someone has to drink from your glass or whatever it is. That's the only way to do it. So if none of those things are happening, there is no transmission. But this goes to, I'll bring it around to something personal. I had a family member who had a child that had a birthday, and one of their children goes to my daughter's school. Well, they're both back in school right now. They have to wear a mask in school all day. But in order to give this other child a gift, we had to go over and wear masks, to which I told my wife, I will not entertain this delusion. And, that was pretty much that. But why was it, if their child's in school with a mask all day, do masks not work then? Why do we have to wear masks inside their home? And, we're family. This is crazy. This is crazy land. And again, like I said, this is people who just worship the state. And there were comments on this article from people that I do were some of them doing this with their children. Some of them were trolls, no doubt. But this whole thing's crazy. You don't do this to inmates. Teenagers would be okay with this probably. I have a teenager right now. She would be perfectly fine. You don't need to isolate little kids. The end.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that, Bill, when you say that kids, they get used to the community taking care of them, and when you strip them of the community and tell them that they have to separate themselves from the community that takes care of them, that does something to a kid's brain. It does something to their psychology. To just for a virus. It's not even it's something actually dangerous. It's just a virus that they could totally get over if they actually got it. But instead we want to isolate them and keep them from their families just for this. It's stupid.
I like the comparison to the solitary confinement, because that's exactly what this is. It's just like a solitary confinement practice because you're in solitary confinement at home.
Yeah. They're getting
Guess
ready.
what? If I have a kid and they're in trouble, one of the ways that I can correct them is by restricting things from them. And part of that restriction is often grounding, being in your room, right? Like, everyone knows this. That kid did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
So they just got sick. And a kid knows if they're deathly ill sick, right? If you have a really bad fever, you feel horrible. I remember doing that in elementary school, being home for a week because I had a really bad flu or something.
Yeah.
You know that. You don't want to come out of your room then. So, this is just ridiculousness. Our society is about to completely die. That's all I can say.
Just from 0 to 100 right there.
Yep.
This society's going to die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I tend to agree with you on that one, but I also agree. I love your assessment that people worship the state, because we've seen, like you mentioned, there were some responses to this where parents were telling publicly what they were experiencing by implementing these rules. So let's look at a few of those here. This is one from Twitter. Again, I can't verify the
Validity.
Yeah, this may be fake, but we know for certain that people will follow everything the state says, just like Bill mentioned. They worship the state. If they get told to wear 3 masks, they'll wear 3 masks. If they get told to wear masks in the car by themselves,
Hell
they'll do
yeah.
that. You name it, okay? So what you're about to read and what you're about to hear is not too far-fetched. Okay, here we go. This is from Twitter. Someone called Mom of 3 is replying to somebody with their experience saying, "Exactly, us too. I have a 7-year-old in isolation downstairs. He keeps messaging me on Facebook Messenger. Mommy, I'm lonely. My 5-year-old wrote in his journal entry today that he is sad because his brother isn't here. I set up a baby monitor to let the 8-year-old ask for things. 5-year-old is using it to talk to the 8-year-old.
Okay, first off, why does your 7-year-old have a Facebook? Like,
Well, that's just
Yeah.
also child abuse.
that's child abuse right
I
there.
don't think a 5-year-old wrote in a journal either. I'm
Yeah,
just
I don't
saying.
think a 5-year-old wrote in a journal. And what are you doing reading your 5-year-old's journal? That's kind of rude.
And so the 14-day isolation begins. This is another post here. Nothing has broken my heart like the sound of my 10-year-old crying while I sit on the other side of the door and tell him 14 days will go by quickly. Hoping PH calls so we can get some advice and answers. Hashtag safe schools now. Hashtag small class sizes. Hashtag Ontario education. So,
Yeah, how about you just like not do what the friggin' state tells you and take care of your kids and hug your kids and let them know like that you're there for them actually, instead of doing it through a door like a friggin' weak weenie.
well, yeah, again, we don't know for sure if those are real, but you know that is actually happening. So
Probably.
people read these articles and they will panic and they will put their kids in the basement. If Dr. Fauci says jump off a bridge. Yeah, exactly, Dari.
Some people will listen to some expert that they've never met in their life, never talked to, has no idea who they are, anything about them, their family situation, and they will say, that person's an expert, therefore my child will do this. And I just don't understand this thought process, but I know people do it. Because that's your child, you have autonomy over them, and you get to decide how they live. Now, there might be a situation where you're doing that very poorly, and people might need to step in. But this is ridiculous. How are we having these conversations where people that have never met you, that live thousands of miles away, influence your life on such a basic level?
It's almost like one could call it a religion almost. Similar function,
Yes,
right? You
yes.
worship somebody you never see, you follow everything they say, and yeah, like they're the 10 Commandments. Leave your kid, and thou shalt not let your kid outside the basement for 14 days.
Well, and it's the scaling issue too that you bring up. I keep talking
Yep.
about it on my channel now because it's been prominent in my head. We have a scaling issue where if this was in my neighborhood, which I forget how many homes, 600-700 homes in the community I live in, and this was the community, and we were making these rules, we would make it up for ourselves. And if I could leave the community and go elsewhere,
Right.
can't do that now. And we're at the point with this thing, and it really is showing you how strong the global governing bodies are, the NGOs, and how much influence they have, because we know that most of these arbitrary rules are nonsense, yet the effect that they're causing seems to be very purposeful, right? To have a change of exchange of funds from one hand to the other, and with all that, it seems like there are driving factors behind what's going on that is going on all over the world, and very few countries are saying, no, we're not going to do this. So it should really point to that this is more of a global player issue, and just people, walking the line with it. The World Economic Forum, perhaps, or some of those folks out there that want the Great Reset, the UN, whomever else, right? And people are more willing to listen to that than to their own conscience about how they should raise their child and what they should do.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Their motherly instincts are overridden. Their family traditions are overridden. Their local culture is overridden by some nebulous entity somewhere in this country saying that you need to do X, Y, Z, everything else goes out the window, and they just comply. Fascinating. It's truly fascinating. I think we got a couple stereo comments here. Let's jump into those.
I've said it before, leftism is a death cult. We've got Kerry talking about the world's going to end in 9 years, climate crisis, this crisis. Everything's a crisis. But I'm not seeing anything where it's just...
Death cult. Yeah, that's a good point. I think he dropped 2 here.
The left is a death cult. The world's going to end in 9 years. We've got
the same one came through twice. Yeah, no, that's a great point, Osis, because to piggyback off of that and what Bill just said, I've been playing with this idea of shared fate. So I think when you have the increase in scale of societies, you also get an increase in shared fate, where when you're sharing city and you're sharing infrastructure with other people, if something happens, you're all screwed. You don't have any ability to be independent to create your own independent outcomes. And when you're part of a system or society, a country or whatever it is, you also are sharing a fate with the COVID response, or stuff like this. If somebody tells you, this is a regional message that went out to the entire region of Peel. I don't know how big that is, but everyone in that region is now sharing the shared fate of their kids are going to be jacked up potentially for the rest of their life because they're part of this bigger system that has this overarching control over them that ultimately has a death cult mentality. This is maladaptive behavior. Again, like I said, it goes against every motherly instinct, every parental instinct, their family traditions, everything that they've were raised on. It's the exact opposite of that. So yeah, death cult and shared fate, all of it is right there, laid out bare for everyone to see.
Well, yeah, have you ever heard of Aleister Crowley?
No.
Ozzy Osbourne had a song with Aleister called Mr. Crowley, right? Yeah. Was one of the early 20th century Satanists, if you would. He said the book of the law is summed up in this: the law is do what thou willst, do whatever you want. He got that supposedly from a demon. There are other people like H.P. Blavatsky. H.P. Blavatsky, who is a mystic woman. She's a Russian mystic that talked to angels or demons, if you would. Who is another one? Alice A. There were a couple of these folks, and they all kind of said these same things, that this leftism, this New World Order stuff, this death cult idea is actually kind of based in some of where this stuff comes from. You go back, you get to Freemasonry and the occult stuff, and these ideas are very. I'm telling you, you can laugh, but these ideas are very.
No, I love
old,
how you take every
part of
answer into
leftism.
the crazy conspiracy world.
Yeah, just like me.
But I say that meaning that they're not probably actually conspiracies, but that and somebody listening to this would be like, oh my God, the Freemasons.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, Jeremy, is like this stuff has been written about. Like I bring up Plato. I'm a big fan of like the classics, the ancient world, and of course I've studied like occult stuff, and I'm just very fascinated with the human condition. So, for the last 15 years, I just read all this stuff and absorb all the news, and I think about it, and all I see is this pattern of human nature and this maladapted nature, as you put it, versus the nature of life, and procreating and building and allowing people to be free, and all that's God, and then everything else is like Satan.
Yeah.
And all the Satan stuff's like don't procreate, be a degenerate, have no soul. Decide today that you can sell your soul for $59.95 at your local Costco or whatever it is,
Yep.
So the ideas are very old. They're just very human, and I think that's the biggest thing lefties never will get, is they don't believe in human nature. And so us who are more conservative, or whatever you want to call us, liberty-minded, traditional, whatever you want to call us, we understand that there is human nature. The left is constantly wanting to destroy it, which in a way is saying that they want to become their own gods and destroy God. And that's where it all comes back to Satanism, right? Because that was that's the idea of Satan is making men like God, and Satan being, I'm going to be just like God, right?
Yeah, I can look out my window right now and I can see somebody in hell. I can see the chaos and the pain and chaos really I think is what I would describe as, demonic, satanic. It's just everything. And I think just to get a little theological, religious with you, when they say, biblically that being in hell is separation from God, think about what that means. You're separated from peace, you're separated from order, you're separated from truth, which is what God is. And you can see that just in the real world right here. If you're not on all kinds of drugs, you're not chopping your parts off, you're not advocating for maladaptive policies, you're not saying don't procreate, you're trying to destroy the family, that's chaos. That's separation from God. They're in hell. They're already in hell.
They're right.
And then these people who...
Listen.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry, Jeremy. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just saying, listen to this little thing from the Bible where they say it's like outer darkness. And we were just talking about locking up children, quarantining them for 2 weeks with no social contact. Outer darkness and being separated from God is like, imagine being without a body, but being conscious, right? In a dark space and just being out in emptiness and void all by yourself for the rest of eternity. And to your point, some people are living that now. They're living that now in this world, right? Like no real association with other people, just suffering in their inner being with no idea what's going on around them in the outside world, right?
Right. It's almost like this is a shortcut to put these kids in hell.
It is. They're getting them ready.
Yeah.
They're preparing them.
They're just sending them straight into hell without any, don't pass go, don't collect $200, don't even get to an adulthood, don't make any decisions for yourself, just send these kids straight into hell.
Yeah. Might as well, because the parents are there, so might as well drag their kids down with them.
Well, there's another theory that I'm playing with, and this is it's tangentially related, that all this anti-whiteness stuff that we're seeing, it goes right in line with the God stuff. I think, and here's my theory, whiteness is just a euphemism for exactly what Bill was saying, those laws, the truths of biology, the laws of the universe, that you can't escape. You can't escape XY chromosomes. You can't escape, mothers and fathers, the difference between men and women. You can't escape whatever it may be, the meritocracy, the fact that people will never and can't be equal. There's just truths that are out there, and they want to push back and fight up against that. And I think by a roundabout way, and it might take a few years to come to full fruition, but whiteness is their battle against that. Whiteness is their battle against actual science, which if you listen to the Brett Weinstein call on Clubhouse, by the way, if you haven't heard that, fascinating, go listen to that. Brett Weinstein, evolutionary biologist, who was, he has his own podcast. He was part of the whole Evergreen debacle where they literally chased him out of the school, I think, with baseball bats because he was white. He's on the forefront of this. He went on a Clubhouse talk. He introduced himself as an evolutionary biologist, and what did they say? They said, "Oh, you mean a eugenicist?"
No.
So they're associating science, actual science, a professor, a scientist. They're calling it a buzzword. It doesn't matter what buzzword you want to use, a Nazi, what eugenicist. It doesn't matter. It's meaningless. The point is they're classifying science, real science, as evil, and they put all that under the same umbrella as whiteness.
Yeah.
So whiteness is science. Whiteness is truth. Whiteness is what got us the society we have today. And they are against that at the core. So that's my contention, is that they're fighting whiteness because they're really fighting science and truth, but they're using whiteness as a proxy or a stand-in for that.
Well, it's easier for people to be behind that. Go ahead, Bill, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Actually, Delaney, you go ahead because I keep talking, and you are the actual co-host. So
it's okay. Well, I was just saying the reason that they make whiteness the
target.
The target. It's easy for people to get ginned up and behind the whole idea of anti-white.
Well, yeah, you can't say I'm anti-science. You can't say I'm anti-evolutionary biology. But if you put it under the umbrella of something else, then you can say you're anti whatever.
Yeah. So
Actually, it's beyond that, guys. You want to know why they use whiteness? It's pretty simple. Whiteness, in its summation, is Western Europe,
Yeah.
the tradition in which we come from. And that is science, that is the Christianity, that is the do unto others, that is the freedom, that is all of the things in which our ancestors came from that basically conquered the world because it was the best.
Yep.
And within that as well, there is a torrid history here in America that they know they can use against us. Even though they try this stuff in other countries, in South America to some degree it doesn't quite catch, and in Europe itself it sort of catches, but they don't have the same racial issues that we have. They use whiteness because they know it has that racial tinge. And another part of this goes all the way back to de Tocqueville. And I don't know if you've ever read Democracy in America, or at least excerpts or anything de Tocqueville's ever written. But he made two very important predictions. One was that he saw that America and Russia were going to be the two competing powers in the world, and they were going to intersect. And the reason why was because America was very industrious and individualistic and free market, and the Slavs had for centuries been slaves or serfs after they were freed from slavery completely, and then were basically searching at the time for socialism and handouts. This is long before the Russian Revolution, by the way.
Yeah.
But he saw this coming, and he knew that there was going to be this dichotomy between the East and the West. And Russia is part of the East. It's just not the Asian tradition. But the other thing he said is the biggest boon in America that was, if anything, would destroy the nation would be the issue of slavery and race. And of course, America started off trying to get rid of slavery, but the Crown kept putting it upon us. If you know anything about the history of this, the original Declaration of Independence was written with a clause rejecting slavery. Thomas Jefferson tried to get rid of slavery both before and after we became our own independent nation. In any case, the issue of slavery, though, was a big one because no one kind of knew how to deal with it because they thought there might be slave revolts and whatever else. So, as people like to often say, as the normie thing is to say, it's our original sin, and within that, because Western Europeanism represents America, even though we're primarily out of the British tradition, they use whiteness. Because whiteness encompasses all this. It encompasses logic. It encompasses science. It encompasses all of these things. And it also has that racial issue that gets people emotional. Another really good book to check out, you can get it online, read it for free, is Manning Johnson's Race, Color, and Communism. And this guy wrote this back in the 1950s. He died shortly after in a car accident, unfortunately. But he was part of the Negro communist movement in the United States for a very long time, and realized he was just being used.
I've heard of that book.
There's documentation of that even before that. So, in any case,
there you go.
Just some food for thought there.
Whiteness it represents the Western values, which are the closest we've come so far to aligning with the universal laws and rules. That's why it's been the most successful, I think. That seems to be the theory anyway. Let's contrast these feminine, chaotic movements and ideas with what we've seen just today. I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but we've got massive news on the COVID front here in America.
Okay.
Let's get away from Canada. They're all commie and feminine. And let's come back to America. Mississippi, breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Mississippi and Texas, the entire states, will be removing all state mandates for COVID protections. Businesses can open 100%. No more mask mandates. No more state intervention in Texas or Mississippi.
Go Texas.
Open for business completely. Meanwhile, I can't even go to the gym here in California yet. But, this we've seen. I wasn't aware that Mississippi was so based, but Texas, we know. Everyone knows Texas was probably going to be one of the forerunners in the advancements back into freedom and the independence aspect of everything. So,
go Texas.
Yep.
Go Mississippi.
that's how we're going to be doing here. And you know why that's going to be interesting is because they're going to open up, and then you're going to have something to compare. You'll have stats from Texas and Mississippi to compare with places that are still locked down, so that you can see, well, wait a minute, my line is still higher for deaths and cases than Texas, and they've been open the whole time. They're completely open now. Like, why isn't my line? Especially if you look at California. California's had stricter everything compared to Texas, but the numbers across the board have all just been higher. Even when you adjust for per capita, per 1 million, the cases and deaths have always been higher.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Florida has been open, pretty much open.
Florida's also...
And their numbers are pretty much the same as ours, and we've had the most restrictions.
They're even lower than ours, actually.
I think they are
Slightly
lower than ours.
Yep.
They're like comparable, but still, it's like we have evidence to show that masks don't work. The lockdowns didn't help any. It just made people more depressed and more suicidal.
Who said I'm losing my swollen Chad?
It's Bill.
Oh, that was me.
We got a couple of comments in stereo. Before we get too far, I want to make sure we don't get too distanced from the theological conversation. If maybe those were comments on that, let's jump into these. We got 4 comments on deck in stereo. Let's go.
Whiteness is a term that was created to describe a set of sociological phenomena in terms of how hierarchical structures that are inextricably tied to race and inextricably tied to class, and how a lot of various white affluent communities, and not even necessarily white communities, operate and conduct themselves, and most importantly, exclude others. It isn't attacking white people as a whole. It isn't even attacking. It can actually also include, for instance, when OJ said, "I'm not black, I'm OJ," and how people kind of often look at him kind of as a metaphor for like the abandonment of race as a concept. But then the second he's tried for murder, the people who were most on his side, the people who most had his back were the black community once again.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say that in an ideal world, in my ideal world anyway, we wouldn't even be discussing. I would give the Morgan Freeman approach to the whole thing and just say, why, don't even talk about it. Why are we talking about race? Why are we talking about whiteness? Would it be okay to talk about blackness in the same way? Are we to assume that the opposite of whiteness is blackness, meaning that being on time is white and being late is blackness, for example? It's just, there's too many absurdities there, and I think I would partially agree that it's not attacking white people directly.
No, it's not.
It's the values and everything that made white people who they are as societies. Yeah, and I think also to add one final point from my side here is that whiteness, the principles and values of the West are exemplified in other races as well. It's not just white Europeans, Asians, certain Indians, for example, Africans come to America and they adopt those principles. They can be as successful or many times more successful than white people.
Oh, yeah.
By simply adopting those values. So it's not really about race so much as, like we talked about, the principles and the philosophy underlying the behavior.
I know, and I think that's what irritates me about when people talk about whiteness is if it's not about race, then why are we bringing up color in? If it's not about the race, if it's about the ideas, then we can argue that. But why are we continuing to bring up skin color in this discussion?
Right. It's almost like they're making it obvious that they're trying to make people hyper aware of race.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to make a society less race, you don't want to make people hyper aware of race.
That's purposeful, though, guys.
I know it is.
Don't take your eye off the ball. Seriously, don't take your eye off the ball, because what the commenter said, I get, but at the same time, what we're seeing is geographically, Europe was in a good position to grow and build civilizations, and so was parts of Asia. The brown parts of the world were not, and so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Africa. We're talking about the Middle East. And also South America. Now, South America,
but those were colonized by white people. That's why they couldn't advance.
Right. But that's why we're making this distinction, because those nations or those areas of the world didn't have good geography to build great civilizations. It took Islam to build up the Middle East. It took Islam. It took a religion. And in my opinion, probably was created for that purpose. But that's another...
And a lot of oil money, too.
Yeah. Well,
right.
I just meant, again, a few centuries ago, right? To have the Ottoman Empire, like, like the old saying, "Had a land war in Asia," right? From Princess Bride. That's because you don't. He's talking about the Middle East. You don't fight in that area. There's just a bunch of nomads and Bedouins and stuff. So yeah. I don't know. You guys are laughing.
I'm laughing because I don't know any of this stuff. Like, I'm not. My strength is definitely not in like the historical side of things. So to hear you just roll this off like nothing is just. It's hilarious to me, but it's also very valuable. So I'm not laughing at you.
My wife thinks I'm a genius, and I'm like, no, honey, I'm just another idiot like everyone else. I just read too much, and I got a good memory of sorts. So
We got 3 more comments on stereo here. Let's hit those up.
I'll give you an example of a characteristic of whiteness that doesn't even involve, people of color. Like, for example, Damien Eccles, the West Memphis Three, they were tried and convicted for a murder that they did not commit because, for instance, one of them was kind of just like a kid who would kind of go like, scratch hubcaps. It's like a 16-year-old kid. Not very cool, but like whatever, doesn't deserve to go to jail for murder he didn't do. One person had 75 IQ, and the other kid was like the town goth kid. This was in West Memphis, which is in Arkansas, but it's like on the border of Tennessee. But yeah, like they went to jail for 18 years, and they said like, oh, you're gonna be practicing all these satanic practices and all these kinds of things. Now this doesn't, this doesn't have a black face in it, this story, but at the same time, I think that it's linked to like the kind of exclusionary behavior that white communities sort of, participate in. That's been my experience.
I'm not sure exactly what he's trying to say there, but maybe are you talking about like because the kind of the moral panic and the moral authority used to be the white Christian kind of subgroup here, where it was all about you listen to Rammstein, you're going to be turned into a Satanist, or you're going to shoot up a school, or you play video games, you're going to become a school shooter, and those people do get targeted and singled out and excluded in the same way. Maybe that's what he's trying to say. I'm not entirely sure on that one.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure with that either. Like, I mean,
maybe there's let's hit his other comment here. Bill, you got any thoughts on that one before we hit this other comment?
I don't want to like knock on your collar or nothing, but to me it just sounds like I call myself a classical liberal, but part of that, classical liberals always had Christian values, and part of that to me is like obfuscation of what is actually going on, because this whole thing is about racial justice in the end. It's about these people didn't have the right choices for things, and they're trying to expand it out to other folks because they have to justify, why does Larry Elder exist? Why does Thomas Sowell exist? Why do those folks exist? Why are they Uncle Toms? They have to justify everything. No matter what, it always comes back to power, and they are being oppressed, and they will say anything and everything in order to gain power. This is part of Saul Alinsky's tactics. Don't worry about lying. Just lie. Just tell them to lie.
Keep the lie going.
It's like I said, yeah, keep it going, and we can talk about, it can be applied other ways, and, this and that, but the reality is it comes back to culture. We all know that. Look at the infographic from the Smithsonian, all the stuff it said. I covered this on All Minus One and on my live show, The Ends Justify the Memes. We talked about it when it came out. It's probably a really bad show because we had a lot of tech issues in the beginning. But look, I mean, we're just not tech guys. So,
I know how that goes.
But the reality is, right, a lot of people talked about that infographic because it was like, this is in our institutions. It is in our government, and it's not about anything but shaming people. One of the folks I've had on my show on the Ends Justify the Memes, Yiz the Eunuch, this is her big deal, is fighting against this anti-white narrative. To me, I think you need more tools in the toolbox, and maybe she's expanding more than just that. But it's not about race. It's about culture, but we're conjoining culture and race.
Yeah.
And so, and again, I don't like the word race generally because ethnicity is a better marker. If you read Thomas Sowell's book, Race and Culture, he gets into that certain ethnicities, certain ethnic groups had better work ethics than others, and they tend to do better. Nigerians come over from Africa to the United States, and they do really, really well. So why is that? Is that about race? Is that about whiteness in Nigeria? Or is it about a culture that is a cultural mentality? you know?
Yeah, no, that brings up exactly the point that I wanted to make there is that whiteness, the racism that they try to talk about today, white supremacy, quote unquote, can only really exist if they continue to expand the definition, and that definition now has shifted from an actual race thing to a culture thing.
Yeah.
They won't admit it. They'll never admit it.
No,
But what they're talking about with white supremacy now, I mean, they tacitly admit it when they come out with the stuff like the Smithsonian that says, being on time is whiteness and stuff like that. But the white supremacy just means that you follow the white principles, basically, or the Western principles and values. It doesn't have anything to do with race anymore. So that's the only way they can continue to call people white supremacists, because people who are lynching blacks and dragging them behind trucks and murdering them in the street and pulling them out of their house and just killing them, those don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say there's like, what, 15 white supremacists left?
There's 15 actual white supremacists left, and they don't even know what the internet is. They gather outside of Walgreens once a year, and I think there was pictures of that. Literally, there was like 15 white supremacists. They don't exist. It's all about the culture. Let's hop over to this comment in stereo here.
Oh, we got another one.
I guess my last point wasn't very clear. Like, I guess in conclusion, there's always another group to exclude. There's like this weird exclusionary behavior that, like me, for example, like I grew up in not the richest community in the world, but like, a pretty well-to-do suburban kind of bubble. And, I saw that same exact behavior. And it was pretty interesting. Like, 1 second, it's like, oh, these, like it's white flight. And then the next second it's, oh, the satanic panic. And it's like all these things have like little to no bearing on actual reality, but it's all based out of fear and like this fearfulness. And you can describe this in a term that doesn't, include whiteness, and it'd be fair. But I think it's an aspect that people, in critical race theory, like want to explain.
Okay, that does clarify for me, and I think that now lets me tie this back to my point, which was originally that whiteness is kind of like referring to science and biology. What he's referring to when groups exclude each other and stuff like that, it's just the well-documented, well-understood concept of in-group preference, which is observable in any kind of communal organism. He mentioned hierarchies in one of his previous comments, but that's really all that is. It's in groups excluding other groups and ensuring the survival of their own group, the people who think like them, the people who act like them, that have their values and their ideas. And maybe it seemed more predominant because white people, Europeans, are the predominant race in the country, but I think that's totally normal for all groups to do.
I was going to say, like, I don't want to hang out and associate myself with lame people that aren't of the like mind, that don't have similar goals as me.
Yeah.
It's not a race thing, it's an ideas thing.
The exclusionary aspect of it isn't, it's definitely something, like you mentioned, that the left pings off of, the critical race theory people, they love to call everything exclusionary, but that excluding other people, that's a discriminatory aspect of just biological reality.
Yeah.
Every single animal that lives in communities discriminates and excludes other animals that they don't want to live with based on how they behave, how they act. I just read a study. I was going to include it as a science bite on tonight's podcast, but when a female chimpanzee leaves her tribe and joins another tribe, in order to fit in with that tribe, the female chimpanzee will adopt the inferior nut cracking methods of the new tribe just to fit in.
Oh, okay.
Because if she didn't, guess what would happen?
She would have no tribe.
She would get excluded.
Yeah, she'd get excluded and
So
have no tribe.
everything from probably ants up to primates are excluding other people just based on biology and how we were raised for millions and millions of years. That's just a simple fact. And I think the caller is kind of right. It doesn't really have anything to do with race or whiteness. It's just one of those universal truths that we were talking about.
Well, like I said earlier in the stream, that it's easier to call it like whiteness and put race on it. It's easier for people to understand it, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though it's like stupid and makes me believe that is real racism, as opposed to like, oh, you're
they're
trying
actually
to make a
racist
point.
against white people.
Yeah,
They're just hiding it in
yeah.
the shell of anti-whiteness.
What were you going to say, Bill?
Well, this is part of the woke. Part of the wokeism is the exclusion too, right? And so, in order to do that appropriately, to be justified, is a counter, the counter to we are being oppressed. Therefore, we have to be exclusionary in order to unite or whatever else. I don't know. It's always, they always justify their actions by the supposed action that's being taken against them, when I think society, of course, has moved forward for the most part, especially in the West, especially in the United States, more so than most of the rest of the world when it comes to racial relations. It might not be perfect, but there is no utopia. But these folks are always looking for utopia. Another thing is, anthropologically speaking, right, the way we started trading with other tribes generally, other communities, or the reason why we started doing so is because it was beneficial to us, right? It was beneficial to join these other groups, but we also kept our own distinct and separate cultures.
Exactly.
So this was a very important thing that always happened. We've had pluralistic societies, and technically America is a pluralistic society. We're not necessarily truly a multicultural society. And in order for us to become the multicultural society that the left sees, they have to divide us in the others, that is everyone who isn't in the in group of wokeness, and you have to get rid of all those people that stand in the way, just like any other sort of leftism, communism, anything you can think of, and you look at the history of, it's all the same. You have to get rid of those people. They have to be the bad guys. We have to turn them into the enemy. And these are the same folks, of course, that have all the power. They own all the institutions while claiming they have no power or authority at all.
Right, we just saw a good example of this a few days ago, where Hyatt was hosting CPAC, and what did everyone on the left say once they saw that the stage resembled Nordic rune that the Nazis might have used?
Oh, yeah.
Exclude them!
Exclude them, boycott them.
Don't let the Republicans and conservatives use your venues. And what did Hyatt say? Hyatt came back and said, we're inclusive, so we're going to host you.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bill is exactly right. The left operates off of exclusion.
Right, it's a constant witch hunt. And something you probably know, Jeremy, the most recent studies on in-group, out-group preference as far as racial groups go and politics is that all racial groups prefer their own racial group except for white liberals. They have a higher out-group preference for other racial groups. And I think, again, I'm not a big fan of using just general, I think race is kind of a stupid term that, it's too nebulous. Ethnicity is a much better term, but for the sake of the way we look at things in the U.S., I mean, race is where we're going to have to leave it, right?
Yeah, great points, and thanks for the comments and the discussion facilitator from the commenters there. What's going on over in YouTube chat? You guys have been chatting it up over there, and we've been neglecting you guys. I see Dari, Steve, Holly in chat over there. Anthony, Arian. Naked guy. He says, check out JP Sears' video post for today. Oh, well, okay, I have to look at that. Wokies are filled with soy, not a good option for fertility. Well, the fertility thing goes with the maladaptive outgroup behavior. I mean, the same leftists that Bill just said who have the outgroup preference, this is completely a maladaptive, evolutionarily speaking. Their outgroup preference, plus they encourage their own group to not have kids. They are literally a suicide cult.
A little bit, yeah.
They're a death cult. I mean, they're generationally speaking, they're not going to last more than like 2 or 3 generations because they're advocating for the death of their own genetic line. But we can't really talk about that. So let's see here. Okay.
Real quick, if Darwin was right and species are seeking out to survive, but also based on all the evolutionary psychology that I'm aware of, we're trying to improve ourselves over time, right? I don't think we're doing a good job of that necessarily. As far as
you mean locking kids in the rooms is not good for evolutionary?
I get it. A lot of strategies are about what's immediate, but as far as long-term strategies, I don't think we're doing a very good job of that, are we?
No, you nailed it. Yeah. That's the difference between
Darwinism.
No, you nailed it, because that's the difference between K strategy and R strategy. Are you familiar with that?
I think I've heard you talk about it, but I'm not too familiar.
So in the biological world, K-strategists is just a term for entities that will invest highly in their offspring. They will plan out their lives. They will be monogamous. They will plan long term. They'll do where our strategists, which is like a salmon, it lays 1,000 eggs. It invests in none of them at all. It just lays eggs and it flies away. the short life history strategists. They're risk takers. They'll have a lot more sexual relations, because to them life is short and you just have to get out there and do as much as you can before you die. They don't plan ahead.
Yeah.
They don't look into the future. They don't have the ability to delay gratification, which is what Bill said. It's all about instant gratification, what I want right now, whatever I'm feeling, emotionality. And our society is very heavily tilted towards our strategy right now, where it's all about instant gratification. Don't think about the future. Don't look long term. And
don't worry about having kids, because the world's going to end in 9 years anyways.
Yeah, and you contrast this with other countries like Bill and I have discussed many times, and Bill has talked about on his channel, the Chinese 100-year plan. When you look at how we're going to compete against countries that are number one, incredibly powerful, but number two, actually planning out their entire collective futures, the long-term outcome does not look good for America.
America has been
Also on a biological level, right? On a level of just being any human being, are we not genetically predisposed for that K strategy?
Yes.
Why are so many people running off the cliffside following everyone else?
Right?
They can watch them do it. They can watch them fall to their deaths, and they're like, I'm going to do it too. It seems to be the right thing.
That's the origin.
What is going on?
That's exactly why I call them mutants, because they're now is it clicking?
Yeah.
That's why they're mutants, because they're maladapted biologically and mentally. The mind is 84% of the genome. So if you have physical mutations like these mutants you see in Antifa and stuff like that, their mind is also messed up.
Yeah.
That's it's highly correlated anyway, not 100% of the time, but humans, biologically speaking, you're pregnant for 9 months. That's a long time. You're very sensitive. You're vulnerable.
You're very vulnerable.
We're naturally K strategists, but we've somehow turned into R strategists with the advent of all this, the comfort that we have. We don't have to fight and struggle for things anymore.
Technology and wealth.
Technology and wealth. Yeah, exactly. That's what's turned us to R strategists, which is why you see now people who are literally in death cults don't want to procreate, and they want to have out-group preference as opposed to in-group preference. So. Fascinating stuff. We're getting into biology, theology, history, everything tonight. It's been a great stream so far.
Yeah.
If you guys are enjoying what you're hearing, we're live on youtube.com/weeklynarrative right now. Our guest on stereo is Bill from All-1. You guys want to check out his podcast and his channel, rather, on YouTube. It's All-1, and his live channel is The Ends Justify the Memes. So he's definitely... I think you've gained some fans in our chat tonight, Bill. Just saying.
Yeah. There's a lot of love for you in the chat tonight, Bill.
Other than that, if you guys are listening on the podcast...
I've not been watching the chat as much, so...
Oh, you were trash talking me in chat earlier, and then you shut it off when I called you out. All right, we've got our final... let's call this the final segment of the night, because this is right on par with... We're going to quantify exactly what we've been talking about here with the mental illness in the children, the negative effects of COVID restrictions on kids. There was a brand new study that just came out today that I wanted to go over with you guys. We got some hard numbers here that will give us some insights into just how bad this whole thing really is. And think about this, the state of kids in modern 2021 right now. They go to school, they get taught, instead of learning how to do algebra, they get taught how to be gay. They come home, their parents are divorced, so they don't have a mom and dad at home. They are stuck on social media all day, just looking at screens, comparing themselves to other kids, getting all these dopamine conditionings online. It's really, they live in a terrible, horrifying existence. And then on top of that, now with the COVID stuff, they get locked in their basements or their rooms. So you would expect, it would be logical to expect that there have been some negative effects on their mental health over the last year, and we now have that data. Let me switch over the view here. And I think we had a comment come in on the stereo. Let's before I jump into this study, let's listen to that comment here.
One thing that the United States does is it touts the individual above all. And the best way I've described it is there's like this kind of fear of collectivism. For example, like unions. I think unions are good. There's been bad unions, don't get me wrong. Please don't get me wrong. But I think unions, for the most part, the idea of unions is good. But like what happened is all this kind of fear of communism led to this touting of the individual above all. Look at Ayn Rand and her objectivist, philosophy. But I think that's kind of what's been causing a lot of the alienation because, think about when you're walking through a forest in the dark with a bunch of people. You're less scared than, if you're walking in a forest all by yourself, which life is a dark forest. If you're walking in a dark forest by yourself, it's exciting at first, but the second you hear a twig snap, it's like horrifying.
Well, I don't know about you, but I like walking in dark forest by myself. I feel enlightened and I feel so free.
Well, I think he does bring up a good point in that, I think there is such a thing as too much individualism because community we're communal animals. We need to have, I think, the community that matters. And when we say individualism, I think that should be a kind of a placeholder for a family.
Yeah.
Individual means not just you as a isolated, atomized person. You as a family unit. That's what the individual should be when you talk about a nationalistic context of an individual, and that is important. So yeah, I think there has been a little bit too much individualism where now you see these 38-year-old cat ladies who are, I'm happy by myself as they chug their 5th bottle of wine for the day. They're individualistic. They have nobody in their life that cares for them. No kids, no nothing. That's what individualism is. That's not what I want.
Yeah.
I want individualism of me and my family, we're self-reliant on ourselves. That's what individualism kind of means to me.
I agree with you. That's individualism to me as well. What about you, Bill? You got any thoughts?
Yeah, it's something like this. Like life is something like God, family, country. That's how it works, and you can apply any level in between in there. As far as yourself, generally, I would say you have to take care of yourself, but you don't want to be the attention. You want to be within the community. But traditionalism, conservatism, individualism, Americanism's always come with that because we've always had family and community. We've always had church and other stuff. But what happened? Well, people stopped going to church because they started becoming more secular. People started making the centers of education the social groups, right? The social community. They started making the TV and the politics. And the culture was the TV.
Yeah.
So you're not spending time with your neighbor, right? You're not spending time doing stuff that might make you a better person, like reading or something that was physical labor or learning a skill. You're watching TV, and now you're getting whatever culture's being pumped in your head. That's your world. That's your reality. And so I talk about this a lot, that we need to understand that there's a balance between community and the individual. The problem, it comes back to scaling, and the community is global, and that is insane. You're a person if you're going to tell me the global community has anything to do with my life, because it doesn't.
No.
So, or you can talk about extreme individualism. We're on the other end realize we are fighting extreme collectivism, and it always comes back to that collectivism and weather. I'm a decentralized everything person. I think that the original church was decentralized. I'm very much against, sorry if I offend any Catholics out there, but the papacy, because I don't think that the church was ever supposed to be organized under a man. And the only man, if there was one to be organized under, is Christ.
I was going to say,
So,
it should be Christ, too.
Right. But I just say, we need to understand that idea of there can be a collective. But let's go back to Dunbar's number, 150. How many times can we multiply that? I don't know, 10, 20 times? Maybe that's it. And even within that 150, that has to be a cell that has some sort of autonomy. So, I'm very much in that. Look, man, I'm a Marine. I was in the Marine Corps. I was a Marine Corps infantryman. We worked in squads and platoons and fire teams. The smallest unit that we would ever be in was 2-man, and that was just to go, take a piss when you're out in the field or something, right? Someone's with you. They got a battle buddy. But the rest of the time, you're in a 4-man team, you're in a 12-man team, you're in a platoon, where you have 30-some-odd guys, and so forth. So we were individuals within a collective. And at the same time, we could operate autonomously. We worked within the group. We knew 2 jobs ahead of us. We fostered up leadership. We did all these things that happen in society, and it's because it's a solely collective society, at least ideologically, from all those who run all the institutions.
Twitter is your community now.
Yeah.
And that is, it's a little bit bigger than the Dunbar's number. For those who don't know, Dunbar's number refers to the scientific study of how many relationships an average human can actually maintain in their brain, which I think is around 150 for like extended family, extended community, you know, the blacksmith in your village or whatever it is. That's the extent of who you can know. And now people have hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter. You think that's going to have any mental effect on a large scale? No, definitely not at all. No, don't question that. It's just a good thing. Keep getting likes.
Yeah. Well, if it makes you feel good, then it's a good thing, right?
Right. Just right on that topic here, mental health with COVID. Let's jump into this study here. Look at some numbers. We've got, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this so you can see on the stream. There we go. Perfect. The COVID-19 pandemic has a profound impact on mental health, particularly on that of young people, defining the pediatric population as individuals aged 0 to 22 years and focusing on age groups 13 to 18 and 19 to 22. Fair Health studied the effects of pandemic on U.S. pediatric mental health. To do so, Fair Health analyzed data from its database of over 32 billion private healthcare claim records, tracking month-by-month changes from January to November 2020 compared to the same months in 2019. Aspects of pediatric mental health investigated include overall mental health, intentional self-harm, overdoses, and substance use disorders. Top mental health diagnoses, reasons for emergency room visits, and state-by-state variations. Here are the key findings. As far as overall mental health, in March and April 2020, mental health claim lines for individuals aged 13 to 18, as a percentage of all medical claim lines, approximately doubled over the same months in the previous year. All medical claim lines, however, decreased by approximately half. So the pattern of increased mental health claim lines and decreased medical claim lines continued through November 2020, though to a lesser extent. So the total number of claims decreased, but the number of mental health claims doubled. So it was a disproportionate increase. That's what they're trying to say here, I think. So we've doubled the general mental health claims here. What about intentional self-harm? Claim lines for intentional self-harm as a percentage of all medical claim lines in 13 to 18 age group increased 90%
Jesus.
in March 2020 compared to March 2019. The increase was even larger when comparing April 2020 to April 2019, nearly doubling, 99.8%. So double the amount of self-harm claims, meaning somebody cut themselves, they tried to consume some pills or whatever it is. I don't know what self-harm entails, all the possibilities. Comparing August 2019 to August 2020 in the Northeast, for the age group 13 to 18, there was a 333.9% increase in intentional self-harm claims as a percentage of all medical claim lines, a rate higher than in any other region in any month studied for that age group.
Wow.
Just to round it up and make it nice and easy, 334% increase in intentional harm claims in the Northeast.
That's a lot.
It's pretty much
It's
left
not
you
just
speechless.
100%. It's 300%.
Over 3 times. And it was already high, probably because, mental health of teenagers these days is awful already, because we already listed all the factors that make their lives all jacked up. Overdoses and substance use disorders. For the age group 13 to 18, claim lines for overdoses increased 95% as a percentage of medical claims of all medical claims in March 2020, and 119% in April 2020 over the same months from the year before. Claim lines for substance use disorders also increased as a percentage of all medical claim lines in March, 65%, and April, 63% in 2020 compared to 2019. And mental health diagnoses for the age group 6 to 12. 6 to 12. We're talking about 6 to 12-year-olds here.
Babies.
Being diagnosed with mental health disorders.
What?
This mental health diagnoses. From the age group 6 to 12, from spring to November 2020, claim lines for obsessive compulsive disorder and tic disorders increased as a percentage of all medical claim lines from their levels in the corresponding months of 2019. For the age group 13 to 18, in April 2020, claims for generalized anxiety disorder increased 93% as a percentage of all medical claim lines over April 2019, while major depressive disorder claims increased 84%, and adjustment disorder claims increased 90%. Now, I'm rounding up on some of those numbers, so for those of you watching, I'm not trying to lie about the numbers. I'm just rounding up from like 89.7 to 90. But those numbers are completely shocking. It's almost like they're pretty much doubling in every category, except for some cases in certain regions where they're over tripling. So
people aren't going to the doctor anymore, for actual physical health problems. They're going to the doctor. They're getting they're having mental health crisis now more than ever.
Well, yeah.
I get it. Being locked up and cooped up for months will do that to you, but it's just the numbers are overwhelming.
And remember, these numbers were probably already quite high. I don't have the numbers that they were at in 2019, but you can guess that they were already high. We already know there's an epidemic of mental health with young kids, especially girls, because of social media, because of exactly what we just talked about. A great callback to everything that Bill explained. It's a disaster, and it's like a black hole. The more mass you put in it, it just gets bigger and bigger. It's just a self-feeding problem.
Yeah, the poor kids, man. These poor kids.
Yeah, we should probably isolate them and lock them in their rooms and never talk to them.
Yeah,
that might help.
That'll help their mental health issues. You're right, Bill.
We got to get those numbers up for 2021. Lock them up.
Lock them up.
Well,
Lock
okay, so
'em up.
this was 1 year, barely a year into kids not being able to physically go to schools. So that in and of itself is probably a huge contributor, we can all acknowledge, right? Now imagine after they've been stuck at home on Zoom calls for 2 years, for 3 years. This is going to continue to get worse and worse, I think. They're self-loathing, so it's probably a net positive. OSIS with the...
I've done... Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just sorry. You were talking. You cut out there, and then whatever.
I was just reading Osis's comment.
I was just saying I've done videos on this too. With the suicide rates going up, it's an obvious outcome. I mean, I was drinking more during the beginning of the lockdown, not because I was super mentally stressed, but just because I had nowhere to go, and I was like, well, gee, I'm sitting around the house, I'm bored to death, I have all this energy.
Alcohol sales spiked.
I'll have a couple beers. Yeah. And like you said, you can't go to the doctor very easily. Both my wife and daughter have had to see the doctor since this whole thing. And, of course, my wife is pregnant now. I could go to the initial appointment, couldn't go to all the appointments before. Now I can go to the appointments again after she's 6 months pregnant because the numbers have changed. Yet the death rate was the same in the county, or actually the number of deaths.
Makes sense.
It's like 4 people in a county of, the number of deaths, like 4 people in a 150,000 person county. And people got sick. And the numbers went up and down with the people getting sick, going into orange and red and whatever the colors are that are stupid and arbitrary.
We're purple here in California.
Yeah, I have no idea what they mean.
I don't either. Nobody knows, but it's provocative.
So to bring it back.
I do know this.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do know this. We're in orange now, and my daughter can go to school. But the point it's hard to see the doctor. Why would you bother unless you need to? Obviously, people are locked up. It's just stressful. People were losing their jobs. Why do you think the riots happened? I mean, the riots happened for a multitude of reasons, but the tension of being locked inside for a couple months, I think that wasn't an issue.
When you lose your job, you lose your health care.
Yep. Yeah, well, that was a dumb, stupid thing that the Democrats did, isn't it? Tying health care to your job.
Well, we can, if we're not to be all doom and gloom here, if we were to offer solutions to this, I think we've already actually talked about them. We've talked about the problem of scale. We've talked about the problem of shared fate, where now we've seen some suggestions in chat where people were saying neighborhoods should create their own schools. Like MA said that. I mean, that's a great suggestion. Because if you were living in a small community that was somewhat isolated from the system, bureaucratically speaking, you could do that. You could decide for yourselves as a group of families. You say, hey, Johnson family and Smith family and Louis family, do you guys agree that we can school our kids, continue to school our kids, and let them have interaction with each other in this environment? And then you would say yes, and then they all would. But we're too tied to shared fate and the large scale of our society to where one guy, one purple-haired idiot somewhere in an office with a nose ring says, put your kid in a closet, so the entire thing just, gets sent into a whirlpool of pain and destruction.
That's why I have my eye on a $7 million property that is nearly 6,000 acres, surrounded by national park, and in a little gully. So, one of these days I'll have that 7 mil.
Start a GoFundMe. As long as you let me visit, then I'll help pitch in.
Yeah, me too, Bill.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you guys are invited.
Hell
I like
yeah.
y'all.
Centralizing the curriculum is a problem, Dari says in chat. Dumbing down kids so they can get a pass. Well, this is, how many angles do we need to take on how awful the education system is, right? And this is just another angle where the education system is now telling you to isolate your own kids at home. We've talked about how the curriculum is jacked up. We talked about how they're removing the advanced placement programs to smash down the smart kids. They're getting rid of testing. They're, teaching kids pronouns in kindergarten. We've talked about so many different things. If anybody in chat even has any idea or slight thought to send their kids to public schools after listening to our stream for like 4 weeks, then I haven't done my job, because I'm trying to convince people to separate, to decentralize, to break away from the system. That's the underlying message of everything that we're trying to say here, is that a good life is possible when you remove yourself from the shared fate, when you remove yourself from that centralized society. And I think Bill would tend to agree with that, but that's the overall message that I try to push. I mean, Bill wants to buy 6,000 acres. I'm also looking at buying some land myself, because, men, that's what men do. We take action.
Yeah. The thing is, I want that land to have people to be able to have a community, but everyone have their own parcel of land, large amount of land, and we can trade amongst each other's and create our own community, but we can get out of this craziness that exists in the world. And I'm a firm believer that they will actually leave most of us folks alone, as long as we're not too active within the world. I know that West Virginia is the third greenest state in the U.S. So that's saying something.
Cheap land too.
With like Alaska, yeah, and a bunch of other places. We have no towns of more than 50 people. There's not a single town in the entire state that has 50,000 people in it. I mean, that's crazy.
That is wild.
I go 2 counties down. Yeah, there's a county on the border of Virginia, more or less, that has 15,000 people in it total, the entire county, and it's all pretty much mountainous. Not sure if I quite want to go there, but my point is
I want to go there. Let's build a Helm's Deep.
Well, there might be better places, is all I'm saying. But yeah, it's like I'm close enough to like the DC area. Even if I move 2 or 3 hours out into nowhere in West Virginia, like the machine, it's very unlikely they're going to come and get me while I'm just trying to live my little Amish life, with some good folks or whatever I'm going to do.
I don't know, man. If you look at London, they're sending police out if you send a mean tweet. So if you make the wrong YouTube video, they might send a squad car out. Come a knocking.
Well, I will have Starlink, so I will have Starlink, so that might be the final straw.
Hey, that Starlink is really getting pumped out. I got offered the beta, and I actually purchased it, but then I read the terms and conditions that it's linked to the region that you sign up for, so you can't take it with you. So you have to find the land you want first, and then get Starlink. but they offered the beta to
Yeah,
me,
that's
so
kinda what
it's
I
coming
was
out.
thinking.
It's coming out. It's close. We're this close. All right, guys. Let's. I think. Did we have one more comment in stereo?
I think we had like 3 in the in
There
stereo.
were. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get to those. Let's hit this
We
last
got
one.
3.
Let's hit this last one that just came in. The other 2 are really old. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. We couldn't get to all of them.
I read this critical race theory study that was that mentioned that and cited that story. It's actually a pretty interesting story. I highly suggest checking it out. West Memphis 3. And obviously there's religious aspects to that, like, a fear of like satanic other that, is entirely invisible and who can't, whose intentions are entirely like, unknowable, because it's not really true or real, but, and obviously like there's like mass hysteria, there's also, elitism there, but I think that there's kind of an interesting case to be made by observing like kind of the exclusionary sort of behavior that I don't know, communities in the U.S. kind of engage in, especially affluent ones.
Well, you know what? I think I like the general idea, the big topic that he's hitting on there, and we are at the 2-hour mark here. I want to respect Bill's time. I think we'll wrap this up here. We do like the idea that he's mentioning there, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more on not only this stream, but the Ends Justify the Memes live stream, which is where you guys can find Bill if you want to follow his content. He's live streams every Wednesday, I believe. Bill, is that correct?
Yeah, I will be on tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on my other channel, The Ends Justify the Memes. And we will have Kit Cope on. Kit Cope is a 4-time Muay Thai world champion. Also was on The Ultimate Fighter, I believe, early back in the day, or one of the early UFC shows was one of the contender type gentlemen was coming up in MMA. So I trained with Kit, keep saying Kip because I have a friend named Kip. Trained with Kit a few weeks back, and we were at this thing, the Warrior Protectors Summit, Full Spectrum Warrior Protectors Summit, and ran by Rich Graham, Full Spectrum Warrior. So it's a bunch of former Navy SEALs and other folk specialists. Did a bunch
A lot of testosterone
stuff,
around there.
Shotguns. Yes, but also Christian male leadership. So phenomenal event. I'm going to try and get Jeremy to go next year with us.
Sounds like a bunch of Nazis.
So, yeah, exactly. Elliot Hulse was there. We're going to have him on in a few weeks as well.
Nice.
The week after this week. So it's Kit Cope. Next Wednesday will be Adam Kolkesh, the former Libertarian presidential candidate. And that is of the Libertarian Party. And Adam's been around forever. If you guys don't know who he is, go look him up because he's been around forever. But and then we'll have Elliot Hulse on, and then you guys are going to be on the week after that. So yeah, and we might have some streams in between there. I'm working on getting Rebecca from Blonde in the Belly, or sorry, yeah, so it is Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, and formerly Beauty and the Beta, now the Matt and Rebecca Show with Matt Christensen. So
he didn't like calling himself a beta anymore.
Yeah.
Good.
What's up?
He didn't like calling himself a beta anymore.
I guess, man.
Not
I don't know.
good.
Matt
Not good
was
for marketing.
deciding not to. Yeah. Anyways, so good month for us because we're having a lot of cool people on, including the two of you.
Well, I had a great time on this
guys,
stream,
come over.
and I think the stereo went well. I liked that. I really liked adding that feature on, so hopefully we'll have you back on here too eventually. And chat, you guys can now know where to find him. You guys can listen to us on all the podcast platforms, Stitcher, iTunes, Google, whatever the other one is. I can't even remember. But if you're listening, you can watch a live stream on youtube.com/weeklynarrative every Tuesday and Saturday, 7 p.m. PST. That's what we're at right now. Come join the chat, drop some comments, and interact with the rest of the crew here. We got a great team in chat that has great conversations.
Tuesday night streams are usually pretty pretty good.
Yes,
pretty
they are.
fire.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up here, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
I did. I enjoyed myself.
Thanks for watching this edition of the Weekly Narrative. We'll see you again on Saturday.
Saturday. To Saturday?
To Saturday.
Okay.
See you, folks.
Good night, everybody.